All right, everybody, welcome to Leadership Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Peak, and this is my co-host, Laura Brandeo. How are you, Laura?
I am wonderful, Mitch. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited for this one because we have the one and only Jamie Cavanaugh. She doesn't really need an introduction, but we want to give her a formal introduction. She is the Chief Operating Officer and partner at Amerifund Home Loans. Jamie's ability to combine her expertise in operations, sales, business efficiency, and vendor services through the eyes of an originator makes her a sought-after advisor to various companies in the industries. With over 20 years in the mortgage industry, Jamie has been in executive leadership teams that has held executive board position at companies like Bank of America, Countrywide, Prospect Mortgage, and Mortgage Corporation of America. Her diversified experience includes compliance, origination, credit risk, post-closing, secondary marketing management, and Jamie's also an FHA DE underwriter, along with active California real estate license, NMLS endorsement, and she's a notary. So, Jamie, thank you so much for being here today. We know we are going to learn so much from you. All right, Mitch, let's kick it off.
All right, welcome, Jamie. And I want to know how you accomplished all that since the age of 10. I mean, you don't look a day over 30, so I don't know how you got all that going.
You're right. You know what? I'm going to revisit this podcast more often because I definitely like the way this is kicking off.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, we want to welcome you aboard, and I'm going to get you started with the first question. So, what are your three key pillars to leadership?
Good question. I would say the first and foremost is to lead by example. The second, listen with an open mind and an open heart. And the third thing would be to empower others so that you're teaching them how to be successful.
Awesome. Wonderful. All right. I want to take the second one about the listening, right? Because we all know that as humans, right, the second someone says something, we're already processing in our brains what our reaction is going to be. So, you know, in this, all these different positions that you've held and the experience that you've gained, how have you learned to become a great listener? And please give your insights as to the value of being that great listener.
Well, as with, I think most of us, we learn by falling down. We don't learn the easy way. You don't learn it from a book. You don't learn it from somebody telling you what to do. You learn it by making mistakes. And so mistakes are learning opportunities. And that plays right into this listening philosophy. I was mentioning before we got started here that I posted this, kind of try to post something a little bit motivational when I can every day on Facebook. And I think it motivates me as much as it does, anybody else. But today's was perception is reality. And the reason it struck me was because it's something that a boss I had 20 plus years ago said to me when I was like a 22-year-old executive in ops who had dealt with a very difficult client. We'd been in process like 45 or 60 days. And this client had really beat up on my entire staff the whole time, and he'd wanted to speak to me. And by the time it got to me, I was, like I mentioned to you, I was ready to roll. I was like, you beat up my staff, you've treated them terribly, the buck stops here. And when those words were spoken to me in a really calm way, perception is reality, it hit me and it switched my thinking, because the reality is, valid or invalid, maybe the delivery from the customer left a lot to be desired. We can't always control the way people treat others, but there's a takeaway in there somewhere, right? Because he didn't get to that level of frustration for no reason. And so what I decided to do was take a proactive approach to that situation. And instead of, waiting for him to call me again, I called him and I wanted to hear the why. What was his journey? And honestly, half the battle was just letting him speak, letting him share what his experience was and take me through the process of the pain points he felt and what got him to the level of upset that he was. And acknowledging that, it meant a lot to him, but it also meant a lot to me because I started taking notes. There were definitely some mistakes made along the way and things that we needed to do to improve our processes, because although our workflow was great, we had tight operational processes in place, the customer's perception, the customer's experience wasn't that. What they saw, what they felt, what was being cascaded to them wasn't that. And so that is where listening is key. And like I think we've talked about many times, as human beings, when we get input, especially when it's negative, immediately we're going to go into defense mode. And I don't think that's ever going to change. It's human nature. But I think recognizing that and having the forethought to kind of just take a moment and listen and just kind of put that reactionary part of you over here while you're listening and process what's being said to you before you respond, it allows you to take that information in and do something meaningful with it, which is hopefully to make some impactful change. And I think there's always a takeaway, no matter whether the person is rude or not, no matter whether they're valid or not, there's always some level of validity in whatever is driving that negative feedback.
Yeah, and excellent point. And you know, it's interesting, Jamie, and look at us right here, right? Here we are on a virtual, you know, the last 18 months or so, right? Here we are, we've been virtual. And our brains are trying so hard to focus, right? We're trying to listen, we're trying to look, we're watching for distractions that might be happening around us, right, in our world. So I love that you said, take that moment to just stop and pause and just focus in on listening to that other person. Because I think, again, biological, I think our brains are trying to process everything, right? We're trying to process our emotions. We're trying to, you know, analyze everything. And then we're trying to think, okay, this person's upset. How do I react? How do I use my voice? What do I say? What are the words? Do I ask them a question? So I think your advice right there of just pause.
Yeah,
Take a moment. I love it. Go ahead, Mitch.
And I think, you know, with anybody, if you're receiving criticism, the first thing in your head pops up is, yeah, but. You know, and you got that in your head the entire time they're talking. You're ready to say, yeah, but I did this, or yeah, but they did that. You got to get that out of your head. And I've learned that, you know, now that I have children that are, you know, 14 and 12 and, you know, they make mistakes and you're like, hey, you can't do that. Yeah, but no, you can't have that mentality. You have to say, yes, I agree. You know, I may be messed up, but how could I, you know, fix it? How can I make, you know, things go better the next time? And like you said, with that customer in your head, you're thinking, oh man, they were tearing my staff apart. But then you got to think, he wasn't an upset customer because you gave him good service. Somebody made an error and it upset him, and then you had the right approach to fix it and, you know, listen to him and get. So how do you get there though? Because everybody has that yeah, but build up and ready to go.
It's so true. And hey, to this day, I have my days. I mean, trust me, my team will tell you, we've had some doozies. You know, we've had a couple of folks, especially during, you know, the earlier part of last year when the pandemic first hit and the mortgage volume was like off the charts and every lender was backed up. So were we. No one could hire ahead of the volume. Everything was delayed. Customers were unhappy. And it just didn't matter what any of us did. It really didn't. There weren't enough hours in the day. There wasn't enough staffing. People were relocating to home work environments. You know, people were upset. I mean, and it wasn't just one customer. It was just a barrage all day, every day. And it was really, I think most of us would agree, the leaders, we were the ones shouldering a lot of it because we couldn't put it on our staff. We had to take the burden of it. And most of the customers were getting directly to us because we were where the buck stopped and we had to be the ones that made all the apologies. And there wasn't an excuse for it. And there wasn't even necessarily a resolution for it. It was just, I'm going to be transparent with you and tell you what's really happening. I'm going to tell you our why as to why this is going on and why it is so atypical of what our typical service levels are. I'm going to tell you what I'm predicting you're going to experience over the next 30 to 45 days. And I'm going to tell you that we're going to continue to do our very, very best and advocate for you. That doesn't mean that I didn't have days and moments where I wanted to snap back. And it also doesn't mean that there weren't customers that were so far out of line that I had to put them in check and say, hey, there's a limit to what we're going to take, what we're going to listen to and how long this is going to go on. So I think that there is a balance there. But as to how to get there, it is a process of realizing that negative feedback is a gift and not a punishment. It is an understanding that telling you that you need to improve is not the same as telling you that you're a failure. It's not the same as telling you that you're bad. What it is doing is telling you that someone values you enough to let you know the areas that you can improve upon so that you can be the best version of yourself, whether that's in business or whether it's personally or as a leader to your team members. And I think that again is really something that is valuable, as opposed to something that should be looked at as, a slap on the hand or a punishment.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Well, there's a saying about that, right? It's when people stop speaking to you and pointing out how you can get better and be your best version of yourself. That means they care when they do that. So when that stops, that's actually the opposite reaction. That doesn't mean everything is glorious. That means, they're never going to change.
They're throwing in the towel.
Yeah, they're throwing in the towel. Okay, I've tried giving them feedback. I've tried to encourage them to grow, but they don't want to. So you just give up. So that's a very good point. That's actually another level of leadership. That's awesome.
They say the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And the same goes for, a business relationship, just like any other. It's when that communication stops, you better be very concerned, because indifference is the enemy of love. It is the antithesis of it, and it is a very bad sign in any relationship.
Absolutely. So you've been leading for years now. So tell us a little bit about number one. So how do you lead by example in your business now?
Well, I'm far from perfect. It's really hard for me because I see all the things that I know that I could do better. But what I try to do is, I think the thing that somewhere in and around my 30s, and I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was, I sort of just started being comfortable in my own skin in a way that allowed me to be super authentic and transparent. And the more I did that, I think that the more people responded and listened, because I wasn't standing at a pulpit preaching. I'm not a dictator. I'm a person who is not only capable of, but willing to, and will absolutely roll up my sleeves and do anything that it takes. So there's no job that I'm above. There's no task that I won't do. And there's nothing I would ever ask of anybody that works with me or for me that I wouldn't do myself. And also, I wouldn't ask anything of them that I don't know they're capable of. And sometimes that means asking more of them than they think they're capable of, but I know that they are. And sometimes you have to bring out the best in people and ask them to push their limits a little bit in order to let them get to the next level. And I hope that by leading by that kind of example, I hope that that's one of the reasons that I've been able to, build a team that's been with me for a pretty long time.
Jamie, number one, you have to listen to my episode where Mitch interviewed me. I almost said verbatim what you just said about rolling up the sleeves and not asking more and all that, asking them to do something. But I really love this, especially what you said at the end, because championing for someone and showing them that you believe in them even more than they necessarily think they are capable of is such a valuable component of leadership. So kudos for that.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And Laura's right. Her response in our episode last week was almost exactly the same.
No surprise.
That was.
I'm in great company. It's an honor to be in Laura's company in that regard. So
this is so much fun, Jamie. That's how I'm just enjoying this, right? Mitch is like, all right, these two are just
two peas in a pod, right?
We've always hit it off since we met at the very first women's mortgage event.
Yeah.
Back in March in Irvine of 2020, like immediately.
It's so weird that we instantly. It's so weird how you just click with some people, and it's like you've known them your whole career.
When you meet someone and you know that you've walked a really similar path, and I'm like, oh yeah, Oh yeah, she's been there. She gets it.
You know, you can have that instant connection with people, and then other people you have the instant opposite connection. You're like, why do people like this person?
Those are the people I'm indifferent to, as it turns out.
Those are the people. What? Say that again.
That I'm indifferent to.
Aren't we all?
Oh yeah.
That is true. That is true. So let's talk about empowering others. So what do you do to, like, you kind of mentioned it already, that you give people tasks that they can do, but maybe they don't. So how else are you empowering people, in your company?
Well, I think it's really important to have one-on-ones with everybody on your team and not talk about the day-to-day. What are their goals? Short-term, long-term, personal, professional. Somebody that works for you, especially somebody that has worked for you for a really long time, their goals may not be the same. I'm going to give an example because it comes to mind of a person that's been with me for almost 9 years. And when she started with us, she was a junior loan processor, fairly new to the industry, kind of just learning the ropes of things. And over the years, I saw that her knowledge had reached a level where she could easily carry a full pipeline as a senior processor. But I asked her a couple of different times, is this something that you're ready for? And she said, I don't think I want it. I don't think I want the pressure. I don't think I want the stress. Different things were going on in life. She had had a new baby at one point, different understandable things. And so totally accepted that, let her continue to thrive in the role that she was in. But I checked in from time to time. And so most recently, about, 3 months ago or so, had a need for a senior again, pulled her back into my office and said, I know I've asked it before more than once, but I'm checking in with you again. Where are you at with this? And her answer was, I've been thinking a lot about it. I've been taking some classes at night, online that I've found to build up on my income calculation skills. That's an area I feel I'm weak in. I'm ready. I want it. So she got it. And I put her on a training plan, and, we mapped it out. It wasn't just like, here you go. It was, no, let's map this out so that A, what we're expecting, and B, the milestones that are going to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And let's start entrusting you with more responsibility. Let's see how it feels for you. Let's see how it feels for us. 90 days later, she's one of my best processors, just like I knew she would be. But 3 years ago, that wasn't where she wanted to be mentally, and today it is, and she's thriving. That is one of the ways that you can help a person grow. It's one of the ways that you can empower and champion someone to be their best. She's thriving where she is, and I could not be happier. So that's an example for you.
That is such a great example. And it's so important, Jamie, right? Because you're right that although you may ask them that question when they first arrive, life happens, right? Like you said, maybe you have a young family. Maybe you're going to school at night to finish your degree. Maybe you're doing something, or maybe you're scared, right? It might also be a combination of that. But listening and taking the time to actually check in with them and see what's best for them is wonderful. And how many times have we seen, we were speaking before we went live, that you don't see a lot of leadership training within the mortgage industry. And that's something I think now we're all speaking about it, right? And now we're bringing it to the front. So we're doing that. But how many times have you seen where people get promoted into managerial roles just because they were great at having a big pipeline, or they did the best numbers as a loan originator? That doesn't make them a good manager. So what are your thoughts on that? Because we do see that. And what are your thoughts in that?
Oh, I have seen, and I've made mistakes in my past, and I've promoted people right out the door because I've promoted them right out of a perfect seat on the bus and right into a situation where they're not happy, they're not equipped. No amount of coaching gets them there, and it ends up going badly. And again, I have myself to blame for that. Maturity, experience, the things you wish you had 15 years ago that I maybe have more of today, led to those decisions. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That is probably one of the most common things we see, especially in larger organizations. And you see it even as, let's say, a mortgage broker like myself when I'm interacting with some of our wholesale partners and things like that, or even a vendor. I know immediately when I'm dealing with a frontline manager or somebody in leadership that is maybe not the strongest leader, but they had lots of technical skills and they're in the wrong seat. They're probably amazing at what they were doing before, but that does not necessarily make them a leader because it's a completely different skill set. And it isn't common to find somebody that has kind of both. It's not super, super common to find a person that's got, you know, heavy technical and analytical skills and also has the leadership skills, because leadership skills are typically something that kind of develops over time. And so most people need a little bit of a path to growth there. Whereas I find a lot of people go right from a frontline support role into a leadership role with no path to growth, no training, no coaching, nothing. And that's why I'm glad podcasts like this are happening, because I think there really is a need for it. And based on the feedback I get from lots of my colleagues in the industry, they want it. They need it. They're listening. They're paying attention.
Yeah, and you're right. I think that's the old school approach is reward your top performers with, you know, managerial positions, but they may not be the right fit. So getting them in the right seat, like you said, on the bus is critical. So someone who averages, you know, is average at what they're doing may be a wonderful leader.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So it's up to you as the leader of the company to evaluate people based on that and not just reward those. But then you have to go back to, are you upsetting your top performers by not allowing them to climb the ladder? You know, how do you explain to them, okay, you're great at what you're doing, but this is what you should be doing. You know, we don't want you moving into another role because it's not right for you.
You have to get creative with people. You have to develop ways for them to grow that may not be in the ways that we traditionally view growth in a corporate organization. We view growth in a traditional sense as like a ladder in which everything is about titles and a chain of command. But the reality of the situation is that people are fulfilled whenever they are taking on more responsibility in tasks that make them feel successful. And it's not necessarily, when you look at reports on attrition at companies, you look at reports on why people leave, it's very rarely is it about compensation.
Right.
Very rarely is it about job titles. It is about employee satisfaction. It's about the culture of a company. When you have top performing individuals who are well compensated for what they do, but who may have outgrown the tasks that they're given, but might not necessarily be the types of folks that have the leadership skills that you need for a leadership role, find something else. These are people that need to have special projects assigned to them. These are people that need to be part of the development of new things for your company. These are the people that should be in meetings with you for strategy planning. You have no idea the value people feel when you ask them to come sit at the table with you and help make decisions. And you don't know the value that brings to your company when you're not the only one making decisions. The input from others is invaluable, critical to any company's success.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people or companies out there that make the error of introducing new systems or new, you know, things like that without getting input from at least the top performers in a company.
Yeah, that's a bad change management plan.
Yeah,
right.
You just roll out, you're like, hey, we're switching CRMs. This is what we're going to do going forward, and everyone's like, whoa, what? We're like, well,
who decided this?
It's supposed to be better, and your people are like, well, wait a minute. We don't know nothing about this. If you would have sat down with your top 3 performers and been like, hey, this is the pros of this new system. What do you think? Then you get their input. If they buy in, then the other people are going to buy in.
That's exactly right.
You know,
yes,
so
you'll have greater adoption because they'll be your ambassadors, right? They'll say, oh, this is so cool. Wait till you see how easy this is. And the next thing you know, even if it's not cool or easy, they'll go along with it. So absolutely. Oh, Jamie, it sounds like you've learned lots of lessons, right? So, and I love that you used one of those lessons in regards to how to better listen and the value of that. What are some other things that you have learned about putting people in the right seat on the bus? Because I think as a leader, if you can master that skill of knowing what seat is best, I think that makes such a fantastic team and culture, and everyone wins. So I know that's not an easy skill, and I know that's not an instant skill. You get better at that in time. So how would you give some advice out there about getting really great at putting those people in the right spots?
I think that this is a two-part answer depending on the size of your organization. Whether it's you in charge of everyone or you with leaders that support you who oversee others directly, pay attention to each and every person within your organization because everybody is different. There are people who will quietly sit at their desk and be a top performer every single day, never ask for a thing, but silently feel underappreciated. There are people who are competitively outperforming or trying to outperform everybody, who thrive on public recognition. What I would say is, in addition to understanding from a tactical perspective what each person's skill set is for the organization and what seed is best for them, also be very mindful of how people receive feedback, positive feedback especially. Make sure that you are speaking at a level that everyone can hear, because people receive information very differently from person to person. And make sure that you're nurturing every single one of your employees, whether that again is yourself or whomever their direct supervisor is, because you'd be surprised at what is going on in the mind and heart of your staff, because they're either afraid to tell you or they think that they're a bother or you're too busy, and they will go on for weeks and months not being fulfilled. And guess what that translates to? Let's forget about the business side of things and that they're not as productive as they could be. They're also unhappy and they might be looking elsewhere, and you might lose a really great employee just because nobody was paying attention. And so that would be my greatest advice.
Yeah, that's very true because, being in sales my whole life, I've seen there are people that love getting an award in front of 300 people and being, cheered on as they come to the stage. But there's other people that don't like that. They would much rather you just bring them into your office and say, man, you're doing a fantastic job, pat on the back, and send you on your way. So, if you promise them the glitz and the glamour and the lights and fame, they might not perform because they're like, I don't want all that. I don't want to be in the spotlight.
Respect and honor each person and where their comfort zone and boundaries are in terms of that kind of recognition. Because for some people, it is a crippling fear to pull them up on a stage. Don't do that to those people. Understand them, respect them. They'll appreciate you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. We had a guest on the podcast where he spoke a lot about personality tests and different, and understanding the proper way to communicate exactly what you were saying. How do your team members like to receive that feedback, right? And how do they want to be rewarded? Some people are motivated in one way. Another person may want to be motivated in another. And listen, that's, years ago, it wasn't like that. Everyone kind of just, here's the box. This is what everybody fits into. But we've learned so much over time. And we now know that once we can dial in to the individual, we can make them feel happy and fulfilled. And of course, it's a great benefit to our companies and our clients. Absolutely. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I think the pandemic has probably helped us even more understand how people work better and feel better about what they're doing and how you're responding to them, just because there's so much out there as far as working from home and having to have time to go walk the dog. And, you have people, you're going to have to manage them a lot differently going forward, because I don't think everybody's going back to the office anytime soon, and probably never. I mean, a large percentage of businesses are probably like, oh, this makes sense. I still go to restaurants in Iowa and, like fast food that's open, but they don't have a dining room open anymore. I don't know what the reasoning is, if they just are like, it's too much work. It's too much work having that open and cleaning up after people, and hey, we'll just send them through the drive-through and it's easier. So there's a lot of changes coming, that we may not notice now, but eventually it's going to all come to light when this is over, and you'll be like, oh, that's going to be different for a long time to come.
Yeah, things are definitely there are things that are irreversibly changed in our world. I think work and life, which used to be so distinctly separate, have merged into one, and employees are now trusted to just get the job done in a lot of ways, much more so than in the past, where it's like, you're going to put in your day, you're going to get your job done. You may take different breaks at different times to do things because you're at home and you're managing, at least for a great part of the last 14 months, you're managing schooling your children at home while you're also trying to work, and everybody just adapted. And isn't it amazing that we did? We sure did adapt. And look at our mortgage industry as an amazing example of an industry that thrived through that persevered through that. And even with all of those changes, here we are. So it can obviously be done. And that is one of the things I agree with, that the remote work situation probably will never go away and probably will be more prevalent across all industries than ever before, because business owners that previously didn't buy into that philosophy had no choice and now see the benefits of it over an office environment. We happen to be in office here for the most part. I do have some remote employees, but mostly that's their choice. When we had the option to reopen, it was like a stampede. Everyone was like, I'm coming back. So that's what we did. But we left it to the team to decide individually what they wanted to do. And either way, it works fine for us. So yes, we adapt.
Right. And, most people working 9 to 5 before, and they're coming home at 5 and they're throwing their, the laptop aside and be like, I'm done with this day, and, move into personal life. But, now it's like you said, it's intermingled. They're taking breaks throughout the day to do other things, but they're also working, after supper or when the kids go to bed. It's kind of intermingled. And I think it's probably better for everybody's mental health to get that stuff together, because you see so many people that miss work because they got a doctor's appointment, and they miss work because of this, and they didn't have the ability before to make that up. It wasn't like they could just go home and work for a couple hours, but I think people feel obligated to do so. They're like, oh, I didn't get this done today because of this, so I'm going to go home and take care of it. So there's definitely advantages to that. So
So Jamie, since this is leadership topic, right? We've spoken a lot about how to lead our teams and how to grow and develop and champion and empower and listen and all that great stuff, right? I want to know, I think leadership starts with ourselves, leading ourselves, right? And of course, we've all over time, right? We mature into that also. So what's your advice to people out there of leading ourselves and kind of keeping ourselves in check? And especially, listen, the pandemic kind of threw all of us out of whack, and we had to, figure out how to adjust and adapt and do everything else. But what's your advice of starting with yourself?
Oh, and this is, I will openly admit that it is a big personal struggle for me to carve out time for self-care. If I had to look at the pandemic, like my self-care routine went like this the whole time, because the good news is there was always an awareness. But the bad news was I had to keep reeling myself back in and reminding myself to stop and pause again and go back to the self-care routine, because it would invariably fall to the bottom of the priority list, under everyone and everything else in life. So I would say I cannot stress the importance of it enough. And that extends to every area of your life, because if you are not well rested, well nourished, mind, body, and spirit, you cannot be the best leader. You cannot be the best partner. You cannot be the best parent. You cannot be the best anything. And it's kind of like the analogy when you're on an airplane and they show you the oxygen mask, and the first thing they tell you is to put your own mask on first. Why? Because they don't need you losing oxygen and passing out before you can help the person or the child or whoever is next to you. The same exact principle applies in leadership and everything else in life. You've got to put your own oxygen mask on first. Take care of yourself first. Please take care of yourself first, because if you don't, then who will? And if you don't, you can't be there for everybody else. You can't run on an empty tank. So self-care, super important.
And as a leader, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to go out towards the people you're leading, because if you're having a miserable time and you're dealing with things that you're not taking care of, then you're going to be taking that out on people that you care about. And people.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Mitch. When Jamie mentioned that she sets the example. Please know, all of us, I don't care who's listening to this right now, everyone is watching you, meaning whether it's your child, whether it's your team, whether it's your spouse, your partner, your friends, your family, people are watching you. And they look to us for, are you okay? Mm-hmm. And the minute we look tired, or the minute we're really cranky, or the minute we're off, people are like, are you okay? Something's not right. So starting with yourself and showing that, if I came on here looking really exhausted and sounding down, you would be like, something's up. That's not Laura. Something's wrong here, right? So you're always being kind of watched out there of, are you okay, Jamie? Okay, wait, Jamie's off a little bit. She had a post on Facebook that was really negative. Something's not right.
Don't think it's like a pointed remark or something. I'm like, oh gosh, no, I was just, it was just something that hit me. I not anything specific.
But they're watching.
Yes.
They're watching. People are always watching that stuff. So take care of yourself. And listen, we all have bad days. Sometimes you have to take an extra moment. Sometimes you have to do something. Go get a pedicure or something. I know that works for me. So things like that, take care of yourself, because when you feel good, you can lead others. I love it.
Yeah, I just saw a thing the other day. I think it was like Mr. Rogers, and he was talking about how he, everybody has anger, but it's what you do with it. And he had a bad day at work, and he went to see his grandkids, and they were spraying hoses, and he was grumpy. And so he's like, I'm just going to tell you now, don't spray me, and they're like, okay. And then he said the one grandchild got closer and closer, and he yelled at him, and he was like, all right, that's it. Turn it off. Go inside. And he was like, then I got home and realized, well, I was a jerk. He never sprayed me. I just took off my bad day out on him, and he had to call and apologize. And he said, Grandpa, I understand. We all do things that, we shouldn't sometimes, and it's okay. And he's like, if I would have never apologized, I would have never got that from my grandson, that he understood that everybody makes mistakes. It was just a bad day. But yeah, whether it's a good day or a bad day, the people you talk to are going to feel it. So you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself for sure.
100%.
I love that story. And I'm picturing like the little kid, like,
right
here, Grandpa.
Get a little bit closer.
I love that. All right. So Jamie, I do have to ask, because I haven't spoken to you in a while. How are you feeling about the market? What are you thinking of the next cycle? What's going on in your world? Since we've got you here, I'm dying to know.
Sure. Yeah, it's been around a while. It's just another cycle like they all are. I tend to not panic because we've sort of seen it all. And when you've been through the Great Recession and the crash and all that stuff, you kind of feel like, it's one of those things. We all knew it was coming. I don't think it's as permanent, though, as some people may fear that it is. I do think I listen a lot to a lot of the market experts, and I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a rebound toward the end of the year, beginning of next. I hope that that's the case. But I also think that the purchase market we know is absolutely crazy. Supply and demand still the big driving factor there, and the biggest issue for buyers. And quite frankly, that's fine for us, because it means the purchase market is going to continue buzzing, and that means more purchase buyers, which is a phenomenal business plan to have as a mortgage broker. Purchases are always great. Somebody's always buying. So, for me, in terms of what we're doing here, I already kind of started a while back doing all the old school stuff, time to do some direct mail, time to do some local radio, time to do,
which is awesome,
silly stuff that people go, oh, what's the point? No, there's the point. Get back to your database. Don't stop proactively doing all the little supplemental things that you've always done, because those are the things that keep the calls coming in and the online leads coming in and all the things that we do that sustain us. And that's where we are. So yeah, business is definitely not where it was 6 months ago, but where it was 6 months ago was not even close to reality. And we all knew that.
I don't think anyone could have possibly realistically thought it was going to maintain there, right? No. But I agree with you, Jamie. It's all cycles. That's what our industry always is. You just have to get used to it. And great advice, what you just said, don't ever stop. It doesn't matter what the market is. It doesn't matter what the predictions are. None of us ever know what's truly going to happen. So stay true to that database, do the things that you consistently been doing, and just keep planting those seeds. Because that's what we have to do anyway, regardless of what the cycle is.
So is the housing shortage like the toilet paper and the gas? Is that what everyone's like? There's no houses.
Actually, yes.
So then everybody just runs out and tries to buy a house.
Very much so. And I mean, I think a lot of home sellers, even now, they're starting to change, but, had been not letting people into their homes because of the pandemic. So you had fewer people listing. You had fewer people giving access to their homes. You had people nervous about making big financial decisions because of the job situation as a result of the pandemic. Again, all pandemic related. So time of year, we're coming up into, the buying season now, and then B, coming out of the worst of the pandemic, we're going to start to see the surge. So we already have, more demand than there is supply, which is driving prices up to the hilt. But now you also have the home buying season hitting. You have us coming out of this pandemic. For the purchase market, it's going to continue. I don't see an end in sight for this kind of craziness that we're dealing with. And so our chief concern is going to be the appraisal challenges and timing and finding appraisers and the value stuff where, you can't even find comparables, early and quickly enough to substantiate these crazy values and prices that homes are going out at. Those are the things we're dealing with right now, and that's the challenge really.
Well, let's talk about mailing and radio and stuff like that, because I always hear people tell me, oh, people aren't doing that anymore. Well, to me, that means then you should be doing it. If they're not getting 32 mailers this week and you're the only one, well, that's probably a smart move. So when people tell you, oh, mailers, no one's doing that anymore. Oh, radio ads, no one's doing that anymore. Billboards, no one's doing that anymore. What do you have to say about that to the audience?
For me, it's always been about our database. And I preach this everywhere I go. Database. We've never stopped nurturing it for decades. It's what has sustained us and continues to sustain us. So I'm always in my database's face. Postcards to my database. Local ads for me in my market do work because I live in kind of a little bit of a traditional society kind of area here. It's a part of Southern California, outside of LA, very tight-knit community. It's my hometown here. So our local newspaper, that goes out, we're in it. We get lots of calls and recognition from that. Our local radio station is local to us. So it's a country music station. So when they hear it's my voice on the ad, they know me. They're like, oh, it's Jamie. They're calling me or my team for the loan. Those are the reasons those things work for us. They may not work in a large scale greater Los Angeles area, but they do work for us. And so I use them more as a supplement to all the other stuff we always do. We have the technology, we have the drip campaigns, we have the dialing for dollars happening, but we also have these other things happening so that there's never a time where Amerifund's not going to be the very first company that my clients think of when they need to do anything or when they have somebody to refer for a mortgage.
All right. So when someone asks you, should we do this or do that? The answer is always both. Just
always.
Yeah,
it's a commitment it's a fund commitment. I mean, direct mail is not cheap. And so to me, it's a cost of doing business. To me, when I look at my marketing budget and I start to, it's just part of what I know has got to keep going. Again, going to that consistency conversation, because it's something I've always done. And because my database management is so critical to our business model, it has to be one of the things I spend my marketing dollars on. That might not be the case for a newer loan officer who maybe doesn't have a massive book of business. They might have a different approach. But if you have a decent book of business and the wherewithal to do it, I say do it.
Are they working? Do you think that direct mail is working more during the pandemic because people are home and people are probably... Do you think people are probably reading their mail more and seeing those things more?
Yeah, and I do postcards so that there's nothing to open. Just little things, little tricks, tricks of the trade, certain sizing that is bigger than your average so that it's really, it sticks out. I was trying to think if I had one handy, I don't, but they're big. So there's just little things you kind of learn over the years that work better than others, and a dedicated phone number on it so that I know if somebody's responding to that particular thing, that's where it's going. So as I'm tracking my marketing dollars, I know that's performing well, that isn't, make adjustments as necessary, just all part of the game.
Well, that's good advice because, it makes sense that you track where it's coming from, because if not, you're just throwing darts at a wall and
Absolutely.
hoping you get some points back somehow.
That's like when you buy online leads or you buy leads from a company, you don't have a lead management system in place. Like I made a comment on someone's post the other day, don't buy leads if you don't have lead management in place, unless you like lighting your money on fire. Because if you don't have a nurturing plan in place, those leads are going to go to waste. So you've got to have the plan in place to nurture and monitor and manage any leads you have, whether it's an existing client or a new one. You've got to be proactive. You've got to have that going. If you don't have it, again, what is my favorite word? Consistency, my favorite word ever on earth. And to Laura's point, as I tell my team all the time, you are planting seeds. In a market like this, it's not refi world. You're not picking low-hanging fruit anymore. You're not going to get, a refi in 5 minutes. You're going to be planting seeds every single day, and it's going to take time for those seeds to sprout, but they will. They will. So plant them every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep watering them.
Keep watering them.
You have to keep watering. All right, Jamie, you are awesome. You are amazing. This was so insightful. We spoke about how to be a great leader to ourselves, to our teams, to the world. And you also give some very tactical advice on how to adapt, how to change, how to plant those seeds, how to make sure you're ready for whatever the cycle is. So, of course, if anyone isn't connected to Jamie on social, follow her. She gives great insights and some great motivational, inspirational, educational, all different kinds of things. And I guess LinkedIn, Facebook, what do you think, Jamie? What's best?
Facebook is probably my primary source. You know that because you're my friend there and you see my stuff and I see yours. LinkedIn I've been getting a little bit more active there and posting some interesting articles and things like that. But I'd say go find me on Facebook, Jamie Cavanaugh. I'm there. I'm all over it. You can always email me, jamie@amerifund.com. Find me. I'm easy to find and happy to help anybody in our industry that's ever looking for any guidance or advice. If you're starting out, if you're established and you got some value out of this and I can be of service to you in any way, I'm happy to help.
And Jamie's not just saying that. That actually is Jamie. Yes.
Absolutely.
You are wonderful.
You are too, my friend. Thank you.